yourself a round of applause for being part of such a big movement. Thank you so much. So this is, though it's California Coastal Cleanup Day and everyone's doing it, we do this once a month here. We're Stand Up for Trash, and we're based here at the Dana Point Harbor. So we host this monthly beach cleanup and community gathering every month. And so we always start with a morning yoga flow. Thank you to Yoga 6. What's her name again?
Breezy.
Breezy. Thank you, Breezy, from Yoga 6, who donates her time to allow for a mindful movement in the morning on the beach. And then we come here, we clean up our community for an hour and a half, and then we have always have a lunch and learn, so we provide you with yummy, nutritious snacks, as well as an educational talk, and we'll get into that in just a second. But that's a priority here at Stand for Trash, is to provide our community with free education. We like to prioritize our local leaders and community members who are doing amazing things in our own community, in our backyards. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up our speaker today. But actually, before we get there, I do want to plug that tonight, Stand for Trash is having our fundraiser, which is a movie screening and fundraiser tonight at Nordhaven Yachts, which is across the harbor here. 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. we're going to be screening a film called Plastic People to educate our community on the harmful effects of plastic, microplastics in your body and human health aspects of that. And then as well, we're going to be providing food and fun and games and really awesome prizes for the silent auction. So we've got surfboards and bikes and art, and so if you're interested in those things, we have much more than that, but please come out and support. We love to bring the community together, have a great time, do great work, and then be rewarded around that and give back. So that's our plug, and so our speaker, Timnit Kefela, who will also be speaking at the movie screening tonight, is going to be giving you a talk this morning. Timnit Kefela is an assistant professor in environmental science and resource management at CSU Channel Islands. She's a distinguished environmental scientist and educator. Her research delves into the sources, pathways, and fate of microplastics in urban soils and coastal marine environments, and how community-informed infrastructural solutions can mitigate their impact. So we're going to hear from her today and tonight as well, so we hope to see you all there. So I'm going to invite Timnit up here.
I really feel like I'm in my Britney era. Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing today? We collected a lot of trash. How much?
1 pound.
1 pound?
2 and a quarter.
Wow, that's a lot of trash. So much trash out there. But thank you all so much for taking the time to be out here and doing that. I do this for a living, and it's kind of cool to see people just really invested in ensuring our beaches are clean and our oceans are safe by capturing the plastic before it ends up in the environment, right? So how many of you are familiar with what plastic is? Does anyone want to tell me what is made out of plastic? Yes.
Like
Water bottles, yeah, definitely, yes. Glass? Glass is not made out of plastic, but the caps can be made out of plastic, yeah. Yes. Toys, yes.
and like those things like the bottle feels like liquid in it.
Yeah.
That I can really hurt.
Definitely, like the soda rings, right? Definitely. Yes. Say that again? Wrappers, yeah, food wrappers. You in the back.
I'm going to say, I believe oils.
Yes, actually that's where plastics originally come from, right? The raw material for what makes plastic is actually fossil fuels. Yeah, we have you over here and then we'll go over there. Soda cans, parts of soda cans, especially the wrapping, can be made out of plastic, yeah.
Plastic bag.
Plastic bags, excellent. Yeah, those are all examples of different types of plastics that are around us. So if I were to ask you if you interacted with plastic today, How many of us would say yes? All of us, right? If you didn't, then that means you live in a special world and I want to know about it. Let me know how you do it. Okay, well, my name is Dr. Timnit Kefela, and thank you for that great introduction. I am an assistant professor at CSU Channel Islands in Camarillo, so we're not actually on the island, even though people think I take a ferry to work every day. We're actually located in Camarillo. And I really care about where plastic ends up. I try to understand where it's coming from, how it's moving, where it ends up, and what impacts it has not only on the environment, but on us as human beings as well. So, let's start by talking about, we know what is plastic. We've talked about what plastics are. How many of us know what microplastics are? Ooh, what are those?
I think they're really small plastics, and they have a lot of chemicals.
Absolutely, that is accurate. It's in the name, really small plastics, right? And for a size reference of when we're talking about how large microplastics are, we're talking about things that are less than 5 millimeters in size. And so that is anything smaller than this, okay, is a microplastic. Do you think we can see that very easily? No, yeah, so it takes quite a bit of work for us to be able to visualize that. And what's really interesting about them is how they come to be. They can be designed to be that size. So for example, in your washing detergents, when you see those small little blue beads, those are microplastics, and they're designed to be like that size specifically. Or a lot of the time, actually, what microplastics are is they break down from larger pieces of plastic. Okay, and that can happen in a number of ways. And this is why it's really important to have like beach cleanups, for example, because it allows us to stop the plastics from breaking down into smaller pieces of plastic. So how they become microplastics is they're out in the environment, and because of the sun, they become a little bit weaker and more brittle. And so much so that when you add, like a wave hits it or you step on it, it shatters and becomes smaller pieces of plastic, okay? And there's a reason why we actually do not like small pieces of plastic. And much of that, yes, do you want to tell me why? Yeah, absolutely. Animals can eat them, right? And they won't be able to really tell the difference between what is actually a real plastic and what isn't. And so they can eat them, and then it can really make them sick, right? And that's correct. So it's important to recognize that plastics are not just plastics. They're actually a bunch of different things. What I mean by that is, like, you have the plastic, but you also have chemicals that are added to the plastic to make them more stretchy, to give them cool colors, that give us these cool different products that we get to use in our lives every day, all right? On top of that, what's really not great about plastics a lot of the time, when you look at a food wrapper, for example, do you think it's just one piece of plastic? No, it's layers and layers and layers of different pieces of plastic that are fused together. And what makes it really great is, like, it ensures our food doesn't get spoiled. It ensures that, our food mostly doesn't get spoiled, which I think is great. We're able to get information on the package about what is particularly going on, like what's inside that package. But that is also why they're really hard to recycle, because it's just like layers and layers and layers of different plastics. It's not just one, okay? And as some of you have brought up excellently, I feel like we have microplastics experts in this, it's not a room, but amphitheater. Microplastics are really harmful, right? They are really harmful to different organisms. So I'm sure we've seen how, turtles have been impacted by them, fish eat them. And we're not only worried about them because of their size and the fact that they're eaten by them, and what they end up doing is actually they end up clogging your stomach, and that becomes really problematic for the animals. They're not able to eat other food, and therefore they get really, really sick. But not only that, they have chemicals in them, and that could potentially, like, once they consume it, like, go out into their bodies and cause some serious harm. And so that's why we spend a lot of time trying to understand why plastics are present, where they're coming from, how they're moving, and where they end up, okay? Okay? So, how do you think plastics move? Yes. The wind, yeah. Exactly, yeah. It's incredibly light, so the wind can carry them far. Yeah, that's a great one. Yes. Yeah. Water.
And also, it can like different objects. And also, it can travel by
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example. Yeah. Animals can pick them up and move them. Yeah, some animals do consume the plastic and then they poop them out, and that really does move them as well. Yes. Sewers? Yes, sewers are definitely play a big role in that. Yes, you in the back. Wind definitely plays a role there. All right, you, and then we'll go to the back.
And it's like the trees, like the whole reason like trees grow is like make the seeds move. So like if like it like animals like get it stuck and then it moves the wrong way. And then it like keeps going and it still has what it's taking up.
Absolutely, yeah. Good point. Yes.
I think it was mentioned how people litter.
Yes, littering. Littering plays a big role. Yes.
If you like pick dirt, it could maybe move. Or if like move it and you didn't see anything, it could
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. So you've all mentioned really interesting ways on how plastics end up in our environment. Another thing too is like, as we generate plastics in general, right? So as you're moving, for example, small pieces of plastic fall off of you because your clothing is also made out of plastic, right? Additionally, when you're driving your car, the tires as they're in rotation, they also shed plastics. And as a result, in like cities, for example, we have plastics where you're just on the surface, and so when you have like rain events, the rain will wash it all the way through the sewer into the ocean as well, okay? So there's numerous ways that plastics end up in our environment. And that is actually a big part of what we choose to study, because we're trying to understand how do we stop them, right? How do we stop them from moving from our environment, our built environment, our cities, our homes, from entering the natural environment, okay? And much of why we're also concerned about that is because plastics don't break down. How long do you think it takes for plastics to break down? Yes. Years and years and years. Yes, you in the back.
60.
60 years? I wish.
61.
51 years?
61.
61 years, okay. Yeah. Yes.
Sometimes if they take it, it's like animals are
Yeah.
and then that makes them like so much smaller.
Yeah. But that's them making them smaller and smaller and smaller, but they don't truly disappear. They just become smaller. Yes.
My kid just told me 450 years.
450 years, yeah. Depending on the plastic, it can be almost 1,000 years as well, right? Yes. Takes a very long time. Yes.
What species or organisms are more prone to die from the plastics? What have you studied?
Yeah, definitely. So there's been a lot of research, especially with seabirds, having a lot of these plastics just like get trapped within like their digestive systems, and therefore they can't really eat anything else and they starve. That results to their death, which is unfortunate. Other organisms that have been impacted are fish, for example, where it's not necessarily the plastic itself, but really the chemicals within the plastic that causes like liver stress, liver function stress. So it has been seen across different organisms, not just aquatic, but more recently we've noticed terrestrially when we're talking about soils that the behavior does change of certain animals as well. Yeah, so yeah, there's quite a bit. But yeah, this is why we really, really care about plastic, and we really want to ensure that we're stopping their movement, because animals are not able to like determine that, hey, this is plastic, right? They're just gonna be like, this is food, right? And because they take a very long time to break down, and as a result, even though they're like excreted or pooped out by the animal, they're still they're still plastic, right? And that's going to be eaten up by something else, right? So it's really important that we are really cognizant of like how much plastic is present, and work towards coming up with solutions to limiting their movement. All right. So one thing I like to do, and I work with different communities in the Bay Area as well as in Oxnard and Camarillo, where we work to understand how plastics are moving and like how to monitor for them. So that means community members and I and some of my colleagues come together and we collect samples and try to understand how much plastic is present. But not only on top of that, we try to understand how we can limit their movement. So there are these really cool things. It's gonna sound real technical, but it's really cool things called green stormwater infrastructure, okay? And what this is you're essentially using plants and soil to filter out plastic from entering the ocean. So when it rains, lots of water is, like the rainwater is picking up, it's what we call stormwater runoff, is picking up all of these small pieces of plastic and trying to take it towards the ocean. So what we're doing is we're trying to intercept that. And we do that by building these things made out of soil and plants to capture that and filter them, with hopes to have like small pieces of, small little microbes degrade these plastics, like actually eat them up and not just make them smaller. Okay? Yes? Oh, you have stormwater infrastructure everywhere. So I haven't looked up Dana Point particularly, but they're all over.
There's a huge waterfall that happens down here.
Yeah.
During the winter.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I've found with my work is like it captures like up to 72% of the plastics that would be deemed to enter the ocean. So that's like a big chunk of plastic that is not entering the ocean. Yes?
So if basically using water and soil to like stop like plastics from like into the ocean, but like how?
Yeah, so what's really cool about soil is like soil is porous. It has little holes in them, right? So what we do is we direct the water to just kind of end up on top of plants and soil that are designed to filter this out. And then it stays there and then it trickles down. And as it's trickling down, it captures all of the plastic, and all that you see that is entering the bottom and entering the ocean is just water. So that is what we try to do. We try to do this working with community members, and a lot of the time, you actually might not know you have green stormwater infrastructure because it just looks like plants and trees. But we almost always do, at least within the state of California. Okay? Yes?
I find that very interesting.
Yeah.
I was not aware of that because I was going to ask how are we capturing the runoff of the plastic right from our roads. That being said, does plastic doesn't harm the plant instead?
So that's the next big question, right? So comes this question of like, how much is too much that it causes harm to the plants, and how much is enough that it won't? So that's the next phase of this questioning. Yeah. Yeah. So on top of all of this, no, it's great. I love questions. They're great. They have me thinking. They grow my own knowledge as well. So I deeply appreciate it. Additionally, I did want to emphasize that we need to think about, I know plastics might seem like they're a daunting topic, something that is very, very stressful. We're like, it's everywhere. In fact, it is in fact everywhere. If we were to think about how much plastic we've produced between 1950 to 2015, we're talking 8.3 billion metric tons of plastics. If I were to compare how many blue whales that is, we're talking 80 million blue whales. So that's a lot of plastic that's out there. And majority of that is actually ending up in the environment or in landfills. And so comes this question of like, how do we actually, on top of like working on these things where we come up with ways to capture them, can you still hear me? Yeah. On top of finding ways on how we can actually capture them, I think it's really important that we pay attention to how we as community members can do something to limit how much plastic ends up in the environment, right? So from an individual level, if you have capacity to do so, I would say try and limit your plastic use, right? But that isn't necessarily as accessible as we may think it is. But just think twice. Do you need like multiple things that are made out of plastic when you can find better alternatives for them? I think that's a really great way to do that. Another way that you can do that is actually working with your community, such as you all are doing here today with the coastal cleanup, to clean up places that are littered with plastic, to limit their ability to move back into the environment. Another way that you can actually work towards this is advocating for it with your local government. So things like plastic bag bans work excellent in actually limiting how much plastic ends up in the environment. We may think that that's not the case, but recently there have been more and more studies showing that these are actually pretty helpful. But I also do think that on top of that is like talking to your local leaders, but not only local, but your governmental leaders, about pushing for the need of like limiting the production of plastic, right? So how many of you are familiar with an international plastics treaty that's being negotiated right now? Not many of us, right? So there is an international plastics treaty that is going through numerous negotiations. And what they're really pushing for here is to limit the production of plastic. We're not saying get rid of plastic altogether. We're saying limit the excessive production of plastic. Because unfortunately, we produce way more than we need. Like, yes, there is needs for plastic in certain industries, such as healthcare, but it's really important to recognize how much is too much. Okay? And so pushing for that advocacy as well, being like, hey, we need production caps, could be a really great way in limiting their ability to enter our environment as well. So that's generally my gist of like what it is that I study and why we should care about plastics. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yes? Yes. There are a lot of fossil fuel-based companies that are pushing back on those treaties, and fossil fuel-based nations that are as well. Primarily Saudi Arabia and the United States are one of the biggest opposers of the plastics treaty. Yeah. Yeah.
What's the alternative to, like you say, you do see plastic everywhere, covering boxes, covering all these cookies and stuff. So what is an alternative that companies can turn to that, I guess plastic obviously is cheap.
Yeah.
So what's an alternative that companies can use that would be then to replace the plastic?
That's a great question. So definitely plastic has these properties. It has the ability to be impermeable to water, for example, and that's why people use it, and it's very cheap. But there have been these alternatives that are being developed by companies where they actually, like plastic is made out of seaweed, or leather is being made out of fish skin, among other things. So they're being looked at as alternatives that have the same properties as plastic, meaning that water doesn't come through and like ruin your product. So that is promising, but for now, unfortunately, I would say it's like thinking about reducing plastic in places that aren't necessary. So if you have a box, you do not need plastic wrapping your box, for example, right? Maybe labeling it directly on your box would be better, because for the most part, plastic is used as labeling for purposes like that, right? So it's just pushing for this need to like limit the amount of plastic that is already being used. Only thinking about it as a necessary element in places, not just because.
What about alternatives for balloons?
For clothes? Balloons? Ooh, that's a great question. Personally, I have a vendetta against balloons, but say that again?
Do they have them?
Reusable balloons? There you go.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So that could be really helpful as an option. Yeah, I didn't even know about that. I learned something new. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, I'll be around if anyone has questions about plastics. That is my bread and butter. I'm always happy to talk about it. And do check out the fundraiser tonight. The Plastics People documentary is amazing. A lot of my colleagues are in it. And it really looks at like plastic and its impact on human health, because that is something we need to pay attention to as well. So it's not just other animals. We are animals too. We are also a small part of this ecosystem, and we need to also recognize that plastics impact us as well. Awesome. But yeah, great job, and thank you so much for working on the coastal cleanup and capturing all of that plastic. You have no idea what impact it has. So thank you.